Today's could be a little different because I'm just gonna I want to talk about balance, having
Okay.
balance as a husband, because I feel like I'm not doing well doing all the things. So between jobs and husbanding and familying, um, when jobs turn up, or you may have multiple opportunities, or you have more responsibility at work, that can kind of affect everything. But also, if you're, just being involved in whatever's going on with the family as well. If that's where a lot of your focus is, then maybe your work may suffer, or your husbanding may suffer. So there's got to be a balance. Um, so I wanted to talk about that today. I mean, I feel like you have a solid handle on balancing, as being a business owner, but also working a full time job, being a parent of many and a husband to one, and still being able to do fun things, recreational things like, golf and, you know, have time to work a job, or work your business, like all those
Mhm.
things. Um, so it might just be, as you always say, it might just be a me learning session and you kind of talking me through it. So
I feel you. Um, so with this conversation, where I think I would start is what's your expectation?
of the conversation or my life.
You're like, what, let's say in a perfect world, everything comes into check, right? You're now controlling your time and you have this quote unquote balance you're looking for. What's your expectation or what does that look like?
That looks like um, putting in strong hours at work, like efficient hours, getting
Mhm.
stuff done, and feeling real confident about feeling like I crushed it on every project or every task, right? Um, it looks like being involved in whatever activity my kids are doing, um, supporting them whatever that is. If it's a sporting event, a you know play, or just being able to take my son and his fiance out to dinner just to have quality time type of stuff, being able
Mhm.
to just support them, and then really showing up for my wife emotionally, and not being too tired to give her the attention that she needs. So that would probably be my main thing, and then still have time to do some recreational things I like to do. um, I don't know, when I say that out loud it feels like a simple formula, and it may just be needing some planning. But the thing about life is, when you have your ideal, there's always curveballs thrown or a wrench thrown in, and then it's like, how do you adapt to those?
Right. So I'll give you the sales mindset behind that, and that is don't create a problem before one exists. All right. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Now, I wrote down your notes, um, hours at work, and you want those to be solid and you want your work to be done well, right? You want time for kids' activities and quality time with them, however that looks. And then you want to be able to show up for your wife and have energy to love her properly. And then you need some me time for the fun stuff, guy stuff. Got it. Now, as a married man, this expectation that you're looking for, what does that look like for your wife?
Ask that again, so I can. And is there a way to ask that differently that I might understand?
Yeah, sure. With this goal that you're trying to accomplish, your expectation might be slightly different than your wife's, or it might be the same. Um, but if you were to, work a plan with your wife, what do you think her expectations for your time spent would look like?
Oh, okay. I can answer and see if I'm answering the question that you're asking. So I'll just kind of shoot that out there.
So, well, and I'll clarify a little bit more. Comparative to the answer you gave me for your expectations, would they be the same? Would she expect you to have, X amount of hours at work? Does she have the same expectation for you to spend, time with the kids' activities and so on?
Gotcha. I think they'd be on par. The probably amount of time spent doing each thing might be a little different, but I think that's kind of the goal that we're aligned in, is that trying to be people that show up for our family. I think that's kind of what we want to do.
I like that. And have you had conversations about this in the past, or?
Um, I would say we have not recently though. So we might just need to do a refresh, um,
Yeah.
which would probably help too.
Yeah. Now, as you can imagine, this is something that I've struggled with for a long time. Um, and I think that before I started having conversations with Katie about it, I was mostly stuck in my own head, right? Like I was holding myself to an expectation ultimately that just could not be met, right? I want to be the best dad I can be. I want to be the best employee I can be. I want to be the best business owner I can be, right? And I want to be the best friend I can be. Now, when I say I want to be the best I can be, the mental image that I have is I am the best, not that
Hmm.
I just am the best. I am the best employee. I am the best business owner. I am the best friend. I am the best husband. I am the best father. That's not realistic, right?
Yes, yes.
So, what I had to start doing is having those conversations with my wife, and I needed the input from her, which but she gave it to me before I was ready for it, which is, really what started me on this path of trying
Yeah.
to figure how much time I need to spend in different areas and what works for best of us, for both of us, and what works for the family. Um, but when I did that, my mindset started changing on what best actually looked like. Right. So now I've learned not to judge myself when I drop the ball. Right. Because I guaranteed to drop the ball in certain areas all of my life. It's just a part of being a human, right?
Yeah.
Now, to the degree that you drop the ball, you might want to pay a little attention to, right? Because if you're at work and you're paying more attention to, your home life, that's not going to fly, right? That'll start to come
Right.
out, and that'll be a problem. But I think the best tool I could use is when you're in whatever space that you're in, be hyper focused on that. Right now, emergencies will come up, and there'll be time for diversions that are warranted. But when you're at work, be at work. When you're at home with your kids, be at home with your kids. Put the phone down, right? Try your best. And it takes some practice to not think about projects you've got going on, things that need done. Because what you'll find is you'll start to drift off. And especially if you have young kids like I do, you might chime back in when they say daddy for the third time.
Hmm.
Right? And you're
Right.
like, man, what did I miss? Right? When you're with your wife, be with your wife. Right. And then and you might already be good at that, but when you really make that your intention, and you came from where I came from, where I had all these, false expectations of who I should be, you start to notice that, oh, when I really focus on them, they are fulfilled in that time that I've given them, right? And we can start to have conversations of, all right, well, hey, if we're talking about the kids, hey, daddy needs to go to work, but when I get back home, I will have this time for you, and we can do these things that you were asking me to do. They don't need to happen right now because we have some priorities as adults that we need to go and take care of. But I promise you, when I get back, I'm yours. Right. And then for me and my wife, we have that family time, but once that's done and we put the kids to bed, now it's me and her time. And that's when we get to have our conversations. That's when we get to watch our TV together, movies or whatever. We're rewatching Harry Potter right now because we're eggheads and that's what
Yeah.
we like.
Why
Uh,
not?
and also actively looking for a new show for us to watch together, right? We started reading together, not even the same book, but just being together.
In the
And
same space and just
yeah,
reading. Yeah, that's awesome.
uh, you know what I mean? So I think it just really takes to steal your word, some intention, right? And then just changing the mindset there that I don't need to be the best at all of these things, but I have to do my best at all of these things. And
Ooh.
this really includes just being where you are. How does that land for you?
That is all of it. I mean, that makes so much sense. Um, One of the big things that you touched on initially was perspective, like how I would look at it as myself, but maybe how my wife would look at it, and and she would have a handle of how that could look to the children, to the kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I mean, Bella's 9, so and she communicates well. Like I could actually probably ask her in her mind what it would look like for me, to be the best, or how what she would like, and having that conversation, and I could probably go above and beyond what she all that she would need, because kids, they're
Mm-hmm.
just like, just be here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So but even having that conversation, obviously the one with the wife is good, just to refresh. And I think what has me on Hinge is just going through the transition, um, having more work responsibility, and then
Mm-hmm.
also having some more home child responsibility, like making sure because it's the summer, making sure she's where she needs to be, and all of her activities that she has going on. I think it has me feeling like I'm not doing enough, but doing so much.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I'm like, man, am I? And again, in my head, like just need to ask my wife, like, does it feel like I'm doing what I need to be doing? Um, but I think what also kind of spurred that is we were doing an activity that we do with all of our couples about like leisure activities and dating, and that's one of the areas we struggle in, as far as setting apart time for us to just have us time. And it was really kind of gut wrenching as we're like going through the sheet and seeing like, man, I think one of the first questions was like, answer these separately. What are some of the best dates you've had, or what are some of the things you enjoy on dates? And like, I couldn't get past like two or three things that like, and it was just a red flag, like, yo, you need to get it together. Like, you guys need to spend more time together,
Yeah.
specifically. Because even going back to when we started dating before we got married, it was still about trying to bring our family together. So like it was a lot of me, her, and Isaiah. So we still really didn't have a lot of like just us time besides like dinner and a movie type
Right.
stuff. So obviously, I mean, that is what it is. That was our focus, was to have our family unit be strong, and that has paid dividends. But at the same time, like now we're looking at like, what do we even really like to do? Because we're so more family oriented, like, oh, the kids will like this, let's do this. Or even if we say, oh, let's do this together, and be like, oh, let's see what that, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, we could do
Yeah.
that. Sometimes it's better than versus trying to find a babysitter. And other times it's like they would generally like this and it'd be a cool memory for us to have. But
Right.
that part of the balance is out of whack for me. And I think that's now weighing on me more. So I may feel like other things, like for me to focus on that, I might have to repurpose energy from some of the other things. But
Mhm.
I also want to continue to be the best there. So that's what I think you're, just being focused and intent when you're at whatever area you are would help. But I think I just need some prep area in the giving my wife the attention and setting aside a time for her space. Um,
Yeah, definitely, man. And then one thing you'll notice too when you start to truly focus on the thing you're doing, right? You'll start to get time back because all those little distractions and diversions and things, if you can get those to go away and like, and I'm sure you've been there before, right? You just like, listen, I just need 1 hour to focus on this project, and you eliminate all distractions,
mhm.
right? And then you get done in like 35 minutes.
Right.
You're like, oh wow, that's crazy, right?
Yeah.
You just earned yourself 25 minutes back that you can put somewhere else.
Yeah. I think a lot of that kind of has to do with a little bit of the summer too, like just
Oh
the
yeah.
schedule, because I work best in the beginning of the day, but my beginning of the day regimen is thrown off doing Ubering my daughter everywhere. So being her
Yeah.
Uber driver. So that time where I would generally feel like I have a handle on the day because
Mhm.
I was able to get up, work out, you know, dive into whatever I'm doing, get a good chunk of it done. And then now it's 10, 11 o'clock, and I feel like I've accomplished a lot. So the rest of the day is cake because I'm just building off that. And now it's like I'm getting stuff done, but it's not that uninterrupted time. So it just
Right.
feels a little off. So I think a combination of those two things really showing me what I'm doing when my with my wife time and then kind of being unsettled in the beginning of the day just has me out of sorts.
Yeah.
So
Now, this might sound strange to some folks out there, but I'll ask you how much of your day is like truly regimented, right? And like for me, as an example, I take my daughter to gymnastics on Tuesdays after work, right? That's in my calendar.
mhm,
Like I'm not going to forget that, right? I know I have to take her. I know what time she has to be there, but by putting it in my calendar, I know how much time I have in between work and the time I need to leave in order to have her there on time, right? Now, there's also like the time of making sure she's fed before that and all that.
mhm,
But just having that idea of all right, work ends at this time. I have this time travel between, right? Do I have time to go get gas? Maybe I do, maybe I don't, right?
mhm.
But having that in my calendar allows me to know, like, yeah, once I get back into town from where I work, like I have 15 minutes to get gas, right? And then what I think is sometimes we allow ourselves to get overwhelmed by ideas, right? Um, and let's just like use you as an example, right? You've got your work responsibilities, right? And as that was developing, I think before we had our conversation, you may have gotten just a little bit lost in the idea of, man, that's a lot, right? And I asked you a couple questions, and you're like, oh, well, actually, I could probably make that work, right?
Yeah.
And you were already thinking about it, but sometimes it just takes someone else's perspective to like really lock it in and like, oh no, that's possible, right?
Yeah.
And I knew you would get there on your own, especially having a conversation with your wife, but sometimes like you just need a shortcut. uh,
For sure.
but again, back to my point, getting overwhelmed by ideas. Like, all right, so let's put it this way: when we talk about money, right, and the idea of what $1 billion is, how many times do you really sit down and break down how much money $1 billion is? We just don't.
Yeah.
I'll answer. You're right. We
Right.
don't. We think like $1 billion is a lot of money. What could I do with $1 billion? And right, our mind kind of stops there, or we might think about a couple things that we might buy or invest in.
Mhm.
But we never really think about like, man, I would not even ever in my lifetime put a dent in that $1 billion with the ideas I just had at the moment
Right.
would not put a dent in that $1 billion. Right. So then when we go to our lives and we're like, man, all right, I want to accomplish this, 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 and this. We get tired just thinking about the
Right.
idea of those things. Like, because we
Mhm.
know how much effort it would go into doing this and doing it well. I know how much effort it takes for me to be a good father because I've been doing that for a long time, right?
Right.
I know how much effort it takes for me to be a good husband, and I know how much effort I'm putting in, through the podcast and having more conversations and being there and trying to love her more and all these things, right? I know what effort it takes for me to be a good friend and be there and, pick up the phone and
Mhm.
hours and, travel when I need to and all those things. If you don't actually sit down and break down the your time barriers and, focusing in those areas, it just well, in my opinion, it just kind of remains an idea.
Yeah, it's true. And we get stuck in idea land.
Mhm.
So, man, I appreciate you. We're running up on time, I think, but you dropped some nuggets in there that I will definitely, it's good reminder. It's kind of things that I knew, but it was like, hey, remember this.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if anyone, haven't heard those ideas and they may be foreign, make sure you hit us up and we can talk about it more. But yeah, that was good. I appreciate all of it.
Absolutely, man. It's something I think about and I need to think about because I have to continually practice it. If I don't, then my schedule gets a little loose and I start hearing from the kids like, "Dad, you work too much."
Yeah, that's the one thing the kids will call you out for sure.
Yeah.
Especially the younger they are, the better they'll just be like, yeah.
Yeah.
So
"You're leaving again? My bad."
right, but you just got here.
Exactly.
I love it. So any final thoughts? Because you crushed it.
Final thought, be intentional with your time. If you want to do something well, focus on it, set aside time for it, and do it well. And then when it's time to put that down and pick up the next thing, like family matters, going to a 90s party tonight. So just had to throw that out. Be there and, shut the phones off and do what you need to do to be focused on the task at hand.